we just got done talking about Afghanistan, and we're out of there now. We're gone, but we don't know what is going to end up happening in the future. Is this going to be our next Vietnam, in which the fall of Saigon happened and the big Cambodian genocide took place and 20% of Cambodia's population was wiped out? Is it going to be that bad over there in Central Asia now that the Taliban is back in power? Okay, I don't know. I am not an expert on what takes place in Asia, but I'm sure that my next guest probably knows quite a bit about what takes place in Asia. Forgive me if I might butcher your name a little bit, sir, but Salih Hudayar is joining me on In the Booth right now, and Salih is the Prime Minister of the East Turkestan Government in Exile. Salih, did I get all of that right?
Yes.
I feel good now. All right, Salih, thanks a lot for coming on In the Booth today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so talk to me a little bit about yourself. Now, you are the leader of the Uyghur people, from what I understand.
Yes, I was elected as the Prime Minister of the East Turkestan Government in Exile in November 2019. I myself, I'm a political refugee who grew up here in the United States, spending most of my life in the United States, having to flee East Turkestan at a very young age.
Okay. And the Uyghur people, these are the people who, they're going through all of these problems with the Chinese. I guess there are human rights abuses and genocide and whatever else.
Yes. China is engaging in genocide in East Turkestan. This has been recognized as genocide by the United States and by the parliaments of the UK, Canada, Belgium, Lithuania, and the Netherlands.
All right. So you know just a little bit about what is taking place in Asia. Now, the Uyghur people, they live in an area that's very, very close to Afghanistan. Talk to me about what does the American withdrawal mean for what is taking place in Asia? I mean, are the Chinese now, I guess they're going to try to expand their power in Central Asia. Is this good for the Uyghur people? Is this good for the advanced world? Talk to me about what's going to be going on here.
Yes, the China's interest in Afghanistan has been going on for quite a while, and this primarily because of China's Belt and Road Initiative. The role of Afghanistan can't be underestimated when concerning China's strategy, and this is why China was the first country to really take the Taliban very seriously, urging the United States and other countries to actually support the Taliban in, developing Afghanistan. And China's concern about developing Afghanistan is not so much about the fact that China actually cares about, the livelihoods of Afghan people, but it has more to do with China's, geopolitical interests in Afghanistan, in Central Asia as a whole. Afghanistan, it borders Central Asia. At the same time, it also is a gateway and access to the Persian Gulf. And the Chinese, they are currently building a naval base in the Pakistani port of Gwadar in Balochistan with the intent of owning a stake in the Persian Gulf. And China's also building a modern airport in Tashqurgan, which is right across the Afghan border inside East Turkestan. And this airport is being made to help ensure a Chinese stake in the Persian Gulf. And when you look at the Chinese, they've also built radar stations in the Maldives. They have a base in Djibouti. And this is all about, ensuring a Chinese stake in the Persian Gulf. And it's clear that China is spreading its net. And in this regard, I would have to say it's not a good, wise decision by the United States to withdraw their most strategic base, which was in Kandahar, um, in Central Asia, because that base could have been used to keep China in check in the future. But now that base is gone, China is going to have free access to expand its Belt and Road Initiative and to expand, its stake in the Persian Gulf, and even, to a certain extent, even in the Mediterranean. China is also trying to push, into the Mediterranean, buying up ports, whether it's ports in Turkey. They're also trying to buy up ports in Greece as well. So these are very, concerning issues that the international community needs to pay attention to.
All right, Salih, now you talk about how this troop withdrawal from Afghanistan is just great for China, bad for the United States. It's going to strengthen China. If I understand correctly, the Chinese want some kind of minerals out of Afghanistan so that they can, I guess, improve their lithium production too. Is there something going on with that?
Yes, Afghanistan is rich in natural resources, especially iron ore, lithium, nickel, and China has already been invested a lot in Afghanistan in terms of mining Afghanistan's resources. But this is just a small portion of the big game here, that the big Chinese strategy. It's Afghanistan's resources are big enough, but it's not as big as China needs it to be in order to continue its so-called development to expand its influence across the world. In East Turkestan itself, for example, that is roughly about 1/5 or roughly about 1/4 of the current territory of the People's Republic of China. And East Turkestan itself is rich in natural and mineral resources. However, it's more to do about the Belt and Road Initiative, which is essentially a Chinese global infrastructure plan in which the Chinese government offers developing countries predatory loans to develop infrastructure projects. Again, these infrastructure projects are ports and railways, making it efficient for trade. And when these countries can no longer pay them, China seizes these properties. And so China is essentially using the Belt and Road Initiative to, engage in neocolonialism in parts of Africa, even in Eastern Europe, Latin America, Southeast Asia, and Afghanistan is particularly significant and important to this plan because it's directly located in between, China and the Middle East and Europe, offering access to China through to the Mediterranean and ultimately, to the Persian Gulf and ultimately into the Mediterranean as well.
All right, Salih, I am actually surprised that you're telling me all of this, that the American troop withdrawal from Afghanistan is good for China. I would think that with all of this that the Chinese are doing to the Uyghur people, Uyghurs are Islamic, and the Taliban and Al-Qaeda are both Islamic. I would think that some of these groups like Al-Qaeda or the Taliban would want to come over the border into where you guys are and try to influence the Uyghur people to fight the Chinese. Am I going wrong on any of that?
This is actually absolutely wrong. The Taliban and Al-Qaeda and other, Islamic militant or terrorist jihadist organizations, they're not going to upset China. In fact, many of these organizations, including the Taliban, they have long relationships with China. China has been supporting them since the late 90s, mid to late 90s, providing them with weapons, technology. And given what's going on right now, in Afghanistan, the Taliban, they're trying to they're trying to, take control of Afghanistan and to show that they are, a stable regime. And so, in order to, um, prevent Afghanistan from returning to a state of civil war, the Taliban regime is going to need, funding, expertise and strategy to help achieve this goal. And the only country that's going to be willing to do this, to support them this way, is China. In fact, the Taliban's spokesman, Suhail Sahin, he appeared last week in Chinese global TV network. It's Chinese state media, urging, the calling on the Chinese government to provide them with money and investments to help rebuild Afghanistan. The fact that China is engaging in a genocide against the Muslims, predominantly Muslim population in East Turkestan, is not going to result in any tension between Beijing and China. In fact, it wouldn't be far stretched to say that the Taliban will never sever their ties with China due to the ongoing genocide of the Uyghurs. When the Taliban was actually in Tianjin last month, when they were meeting with Chinese officials, they are back in July when they were meeting with Chinese officials, they stated that they wouldn't be, while they care about the rights of Muslims and are against oppression, they clearly stated that they won't be interfering in China's so-called internal affairs regarding the Uyghur genocide. So there's no absolute way that the Taliban will even, bother to upset China, its main supporter, when it comes to the Uyghur genocide.
Yeah, Salih, that's exactly what I was going to ask you. I was going to say, okay, isn't that hypocritical of them to run around saying that they support Muslims and they want to prevent, anything bad happening to any Muslims, but that they won't support the Uyghur people as the Uyghurs are going through all of these terrible things with China. So basically, the Uyghurs and the Taliban and Al-Qaeda are not exactly friends.
No, absolutely not. China, there's a saying, my enemy, an enemy of my friend, an enemy of my enemy is my friend. In this case, the Taliban are friends with China, so therefore they can't be friends with the Uyghurs or the people of East Turkestan. In fact, the Taliban has repeatedly, in the past, sent back Uyghurs that had fled to Afghanistan, and there are growing fears that they will do the same. There's about 2,000 Uyghurs in Afghanistan, most of who had fled East Turkestan to Afghanistan shortly after China took over East Turkestan back in 1949, and they are being, harassed. They are currently being targeted by the Taliban. Their information is being collected, and there's growing fears that they will be deported or even killed.
Wow. All right. Well, Salih, you seem to know an awful lot about what's going on over there in Central Asia. One fear that a lot of Americans have is now that the Taliban is back in control, is it in their interest to perform another 9/11 on the United States? Now, if I were to guess something, and of course I don't pretend to be any kind of an expert on what goes on in Central Asia, but if I were to predict something, I would say that the Taliban would not attack the United States because they don't want the United States to invade Afghanistan and occupy it for another 20 years. And now what you're telling me is that they're trying to get along with the Chinese, and the Chinese are trying to expand their power in Central Asia, so the Chinese would not support another 9/11 attack on the United States. Tell me where I'm going wrong there.
I don't think you're going wrong in the sense that the Taliban would not want to, support or engage in, activities targeting the United States or engage in another 9/11, simply for the fact that, Afghanistan has been in conflict for almost over 40 years, since really the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan back in 1979, and especially the past 20 years, there's been civil war between the Taliban and various, the Afghan government and various tribal factions. In this sense, the Taliban, they don't have the manpower, the equipment necessarily to fight against the United States. So I don't think they would be doing anything like that. However, there are other terrorist organizations, in the Middle East, in Central Asia, in Afghanistan, even like ISIS, that might be, that China might use to target the United States in order to, push the United States out of other places as well. So that you cannot rule out. But the fact that the Taliban, I doubt they will do anything like that, because they want to remain in power, and the only way that they can remain in power is if they try to, stabilize Afghanistan and try to prove to the international community that they are not the old Taliban that they used to be.
Really? So we might expect them to not do things like set women on fire for not cooking correctly, or refuse to allow women to be judges or mayors or anything along those lines. Is that something that we may not see from the Taliban?
No, not on those type of issues. I mean, they might continue to do that, but as far as targeting Americans or targeting U.S. Forces, whether it's inside Afghanistan, there's no U.S. forces left, but launching attacks against the United States or American forces in other places, I doubt they will do. But in terms of their ideology, they are trying to balance it out as they're saying, to balance out their Islamic principles with their the realistic situation of the global community. But I don't think that the Taliban is going to guarantee women's rights or rights for other minorities or other ethnic groups or religious groups, for that matter. In fact, the Taliban they're targeting the Hazara, which are an ethnically Turkic population that have been residing in Afghanistan for almost 1,000 years now. They're non-Persian. The Taliban, they're mostly Pashto, so they're targeting them because these Hazaras, one, they're not Sunni; two, they're not ethnically of the same ethnic group that majority of the Taliban come from. They're destroying cultural sites already in Afghanistan. They're one of a mural of a 15th century Turkic politician, poet named Shirnawai. That was destroyed just yesterday by the Taliban. So in terms of their foreign policy objectives, they're not going to upset. They're not going to do anything that might damage the security and interests of the United States and Western countries. But they're going to continue to, inside Afghanistan, they're going to continue being the way that they were in terms of their ideology back when they were in power prior to the U.S. Invasion of Afghanistan back in 2001.
All right, Salih, when the United States left Vietnam in 1975, the Viet Cong invaded everything. They went into Cambodia, and they essentially killed 20% of the population of Cambodia in one of the worst genocides of the 20th century. Is it far-fetched to guess that anything like that is going to happen in Afghanistan?
Well, as I mentioned, they might be, expand their targeting of non-Pashto ethnic groups, mainly like the Hazara. Back even when they were in power in the from 1996 to 2001, the Taliban killed an estimated 40,000 plus Hazaras. So and already they're starting to target them. So you could see that potentially happening again to a larger extent. At the same time, there are fears, by other countries like India, for example. They have the issue with Kashmir, and Kashmiri militants are calling on the Taliban to help them, quote, liberate, Kashmir. So there might be other issues that come up, but it's very difficult to certain at what level it's going to happen. They might do it under the covertly, or they might explicitly target groups like the Hazara openly, like they did before.
All right. Well, joining me once again on In the Booth is Salih Hudayar, who is the Prime Minister of the East Turkestan government in exile. Salih, thanks a lot for coming on today and shedding a little bit of light about what we can expect out of Central Asia. Is there anything that people can go to find out more about the Uyghur people and their struggle with the Chinese?
Yes, they can visit our website at east-turkestan.net or follow us on Twitter, Facebook at ETExile.gov or ET Awakening.
All right, once again, Salih Hudayar joining me today. And folks, we're going to wrap up In the Booth right after this.
In the Booth will